Hey everyone, it's Sarah, and I am back to film my June reading journal. I'm filming this very late. It's the 16th, I believe, and life has just been busy. We're in the process of moving at the end of the summer, and so I haven't been at home a lot because we've had a lot of showings. And so, anyways, better late than never, right? So let's get into it. So, first off, I have my overview. I guess I also have um, my overview for just the rough when I read what books and when. So I had a lot of books that I was in progress for a while. Like The Silent Patient took me a while, partially because I was trying to read that with my husband. Um, then we have By the Book, which was another audiobook that was just kind of picked it up here and there. Not necessarily that I didn't like it. Um, and then By a Thread, I think, was the other one that took me kind of a little while, but lots of longer arrows. And then you'll have some here in the middle that are a little bit shorter because I had more time to devote to reading. But all in all, in the month of June, I read 9 books total. My favorite book this month was I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, and I'll get into that more when we talk about the books individually. But even though life has been really busy, I still find a lot of time to read, especially audiobooks, because I still am driving a lot. I have a new job, and since we're in the process of relocating, um, we're staying with my husband's parents and for most of the week, and they still live about 40 minutes away from where my job is, but it's better than the hour and a half that I would have to drive one way from our current house. So, still reading a lot of books, still listening to a lot of books. And since we've been at their house, I feel like there's not as many like cleaning and packing and tasks while we're there. So I end up reading a lot in my free time. And then here's just another overlook. It's a little bit more simple this month just because I don't have all of my planning supplies with me, but I'll add in some washi later. I just did a light pink for when I started the books and then a darker pink to show that I finished it. Then I didn't take as many notes this month on these pages. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but I do mark in when I read. I read every day except for one, which is quite impressive. And then books versus audiobooks. Um, so still, like I said, reading a lot. I didn't focus very much on the June bingo. I just did one bingo across, but that was everything there. And then getting into my other reading journal, this is my Goodreads tracker. I think this is obviously more filled out now since we're still halfway through the month of July. I've read quite a few books already in July and have started filling things in, but we're progressing really nicely. I actually ordered more of these stickers from the Shelfie Chronicles because I was running out of room, obviously, and she was having her anniversary sale recently. So in the month of June, like I said, 9 books and then 3,176 pages total that I read. And then getting into the individual books, the first book I read this month was Yes, Please by Amy Poehler. This one was just an audiobook that I listened to. I appreciated that it was her reading it. I thought that was really interesting. I didn't know a lot about Amy Poehler. I've never watched Parks and Rec, but after reading it, she talks a lot about her experiences with Parks and Rec. And so I think that I sometime will go and watch the show. But no, I just enjoyed it. It was funny. There were some good moments. I gave it 4 stars, and I read it. That one I read really quickly because I had a lot of driving in those days, and it wasn't a very long book. It was only 7 hours and 31 minutes. Then we had The Silent Patient. I tried to listen to this with my husband, which is why it took us so long to read it because We usually only listen to audiobooks when we're driving places, and it's hard to sit down and finish them sometimes when we start an audiobook on a long road trip and don't finish it, on the road trip. So this one is a thriller. You have Alicia Berenson, and she murdered her husband. She shot him 5 times in the face, and they're trying. And then once she's discovered, or once they find her, she doesn't say a word to anyone, and she's been in this facility for a number of years, and she hasn't talked since that day. And so you have this therapist named Theo who is trying to get her to talk to try to figure out why she did what she did or what was going on. See if, I don't know, if she was innocent or something. And so anyways, it was a thriller. They go back and forth um between a couple of different points of view, and the end is definitely very interesting. I gave it 4 stars, but um, since it took us a while to get through it, kind of had to go back and like remember what had happened and things like that. But all in all, I thought it was a good book. I think it would have been a little bit better, or I would have enjoyed it a little bit more if we would have read it all not so spaced out. But that's on us for trying to listen to it together as an audiobook. You know what I mean? Then we have The Dead Ringer. I had gotten a box from my library. They'll give you a box of books up to once a month if you want to, just based on what you like to read or what you've been reading lately or what you're interested in reading. And I love a lot of mysteries. That's probably mystery or thriller is probably my favorite genre. And so they had recommended and put this book in a box for me, and I hated it. It's an Agatha Raisin mystery. It's also, when I read a series, I like to start it from the beginning. Granted, Agatha Christie, is my favorite mystery author. I haven't read all of those books in order. I mean, generally speaking, they're not necessarily something you have to read in order, but other series that I read, like Janet Ivanovich, with her Stephanie Plum novels. I mean, at the beginning of every book, they have like, here's the breakdown of Stephanie Plum and all of the characters. And I thought this was missing that. Like, it kind of just dove right into it. I mean, even Agatha Christie kind of does, here's Hercule Poirot, and he's this Belgian detective, and he's very particular, and he has a big mustache, and things like that. And I feel like they just kind of dove right into the story, and I didn't really understand who the detective was. I also the person doesn't even get murdered until about halfway through the book. So the first half of it's just kind of this weird. So basically, it's this small town that has this church with bells, and they're famous for their bell ringing, that they ring it to different tunes or classic music. And so but they're having this high priest kind of guy come and visit the church, and it's a big deal, and so they want to impress him. But then there's 2 sisters that are like in charge of the bell ringers, and they're kind of like the wealthy people of the town. They're twins, and they're really weird, and they really like the guy. And anyways, one of them ends up getting murdered. But like I said, she doesn't get murdered till like halfway through the book. So the first half of it is all this preparation for this priest guy to come and visit, and then everyone fawning over him, but he has kind of a weird past where he may or may not have murdered someone in the past. And then you have this detective who she didn't do a lot of detecting that I saw in the book. And she has all these assistants that seem to do all the work for her. And then she was just obsessed with all of these different guys. Like, she falls for this reporter guy, and and it's all about, oh my gosh, I think I'm in love, and I'm falling so deep so hard and fast. And then that doesn't work out, and then she goes on to a different guy, or then her neighbor. Obviously, there's some history there, probably from a different book, because this is, I don't know, 23 in the series. So I it was just it was a lot of kind of um, gossipy small town kind of at the beginning. Then, like I said, then the detective, I feel like she was just more boy obsessed or man obsessed than anything else. And I never really got who she was. She wasn't impressive as a character. Um, and maybe some of the other books are better. Maybe this is just a dud. I don't know, but I didn't like the book, and I really don't have any desire to read any more Agatha Raisin mysteries. I did see that they made it into a TV show, so according to like the little medallion on the cover. So maybe sometime I'd go check out the TV show and see if that intrigues me any more into reading the book. But I just it was really disappointing, and I felt bad telling the librarians that I really hated it, but I really hated it. Didn't even get a quote out of there because I was just trying to get through it. Next, on to a book that I did like. So this was by the book. In January, I read the first book in this kind of retelling of fairy tales. So If the Shoe Fits is the first book in the a meant to be series. They're not the same characters, not even the same author. It's just kind of a collection of authors, I'm assuming, to retell these stories. And I believe the third book is coming out, or maybe it just came out this summer. And that one is a Little Mermaid theme. But this one is a Beauty and the Beast themed kind of retelling. And I thought it was really good. I gave it 4 stars. So this one, you have Izzy, who is a publishing assistant, editorial assistant at a publisher, book publisher, and she's worked there for a few years. She's kind of underappreciated. They go to some event or conference, and then while she's there, she decides to look in on one of their authors that they've been struggling to get updates on. They give him a big advance. It's a celebrity named Bo, and he was going to be writing this tell all story. He had like partying days, famous parents, and things like that. But he hasn't checked in with them for like 2 years or something like that. And they haven't seen any of his work, to know how the book is progressing. And at this point, they just kind of want to know, is the book going to happen or not? And so she's going over there to his house since this conference. She lives in New York, but the conference was in California. And so he lives in California to see if she can get an update and some progress to report to her boss. And she gets there, and they he basically um, they basically end up proposing that she moves in with him, to try to help him write this book, to motivate him or give him ideas or help him out or whatever she can. And her boss agrees to it. And at first it's just for, a couple of days, then it's, a couple of weeks or a month or something like that. And um, so yeah, it was a cute take on it, because obviously books are very important in Beauty and the Beast. But it was just a different viewpoint of it from like they're writing a book is kind of the progression of the novel. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was cute. I thought it was um, lighthearted and fun. So 4 stars on that one. I listened to the audiobook, and that one was pretty good. Then I have my favorite book for this month. This one was I'm Glad My Mom Died. And I finished this audiobook on my mom's birthday, and I figured I probably couldn't start my next audiobook on my mom's birthday with an audiobook that says I'm Glad My Mom Died. So I had to wait a day to start it. But I finished it in 2 days. It was fantastic. So, and it also wasn't very long. It was 6 hours and 26 minutes. But it's a memoir by Jeanette McCurdy, and she was a child actress. And it talks all about how basically her mom got her into child acting. They talk about eating disorders and yeah, just that she didn't want to be a child actress, but that her mom wanted her to, and kind of how that all played out. And then yeah, her mom obviously dies at some point, and then it's kind of her dealing with that and her feelings towards her mom and her childhood and things like that. So I really enjoyed this one. Would highly recommend. And the audiobook was fantastic because she does read it herself. I listened to, in you'll see, I think I read another memoir this month too, but I've been really into memoirs recently, or I've been reading a lot of them. But this one was definitely my favorite that I've read so far. So then I have By a Thread. This one I read as a Kindle book, so so it took me a while to get through it, like 3 weeks or so. But this one was cute. It was a romance. I didn't love the beginning of it. Um, so you have Allie and Dominic, and the beginning was just kind of, obviously they're introducing the characters. Dominic is kind of this stern, rich boss guy, and then Allie is struggling. Her father has, uh, I think, early onset Alzheimer's or dementia, and so he is in a home, and she's trying to get his house, which is in disrepair, trying to get it fixed up and ready to sell. And so she's, kind of struggling to work a bunch of jobs and do that on the side. And anyways, Dominic comes into the pizza shop that she's working at, and he's really rude, or they're rude to each other, I guess. And anyways, Ellie ends up getting fired from the job, and Dominic was out for lunch with his mother, and his mother is the owner, editor of this fashion magazine. And so she ends up offering Allie a job at the fashion magazine. And so it's kind of a work romance, enemies to lovers kind of romance. And so, like I said, the beginning I wasn't so sure on, didn't love the beginning with people being mean to each other. I don't know, it just seemed like over the top. Like, did people really act like that in real life? But then as it kind of progressed, I enjoyed the characters more. I liked the characters more. So all in all, I gave it 5 stars. Probably like a 4.5 rounded up to 5. But in general, I'm a high rater. I enjoyed it. Very steamy later on. But yeah, like I said, all in all, I really enjoyed it. And, for what it's worth, it was a really good romance in the end. Um, then I have The Lighthouse Keeper's Daughter. This one was a historical fiction, and it tells two stories. You have Grace Darling, who I think is actually based on a real person, but Grace Darling is in 1838, and then you have Matilda, who is in 1938, so 100 years later. But basically, there's a shipwreck, and Grace is the daughter of the lighthouse keeper, and she spots the shipwreck and convinces her dad to go out in the storm to try to save the survivors. And he doesn't really want to do it, but she convinces him, to go with her, to go to save these people. And they end up saving, I don't remember how many lives, a dozen or so lives. And she ends up becoming kind of a media darling. How, people kind of latch onto the story, and how a woman helped save these, um, survivors of a shipwreck, and how incredible it was. And so she kind of becomes a little bit famous for that. And then you have Matilda, who 100 years later, she's sent to live with her distant relative, um, who also runs a lighthouse, but this one is in, I think, Grace's lighthouse is somewhere in like the UK, and then Harriet's lighthouse is in Rhode Island. So different lighthouses, but she goes to live with this relative, and it's kind of just because she's pregnant. I didn't say that. Matilda's pregnant, and so her parents basically banish her to go live with this relative until things clear up. She has the baby, and then she can move back like nothing's ever happened. Um, but it's kind of like these two stories and how they ultimately connect to each other. Um, and kind of finding out about people's past and things like that. So I enjoyed that. That was the other book I got in the box from my library. So not one I would have necessarily picked up on my own, but someone picked out for me, and I did enjoy. Then we have Local Woman Missing. This one I enjoyed a lot. 5 stars. Um, and maybe, like I said, I do rate things generally pretty high as long as I have a good experience with it and things. Um, so yeah, 5 stars. And this one was a thriller. You have one woman goes missing, Shelley Tebow. She had just had a baby a couple weeks before, and then now another woman is missing, Meredith Dickey, who um, is a doula, and then her daughter Delilah. And so it goes, so it starts off with Delilah's point of view, and she has basically been kept in a basement for all of these years, and it's basically her escaping from her captors. Well, now it's 11 years later, or 11 years since she was kidnapped, that she escapes and returns. And so then it kind of dredges back up the story and like what happened to her mother. And because her mother, I don't want to give too much away. So yeah, it's basically you're trying to figure out what happened to these three people essentially, and it's told in some different viewpoints. You have like her brother, a neighbor, and Meredith herself, like past viewpoints. Um, and I think that was all of them. Maybe there's another viewpoint in there too. But it's just really interesting kind of piecing together the story. There's some good twists and turns, and ultimately, made for a pretty good read. And I listened to the audiobook on that one as well. That was pretty good audiobook too. And then last but for this month, anyways, I read Agatha Christie, Double Sin and Other Stories. It was just a collection of short stories. One of the challenges I'm doing for this year is the Buzzword Challenge. And the buzzword for the month of June was other, so mother, brother, other, etc. And I was really struggling to find a book. There were a couple on my to be read list, but I couldn't get a hold of any of them. And so I ended up seeing this at the library, and I figured um, that would be good since they were short stories. I think it was six or eight short stories. It went by really fast, and it was a nice mix. You had some Hercule Poirot, and you had some Miss Marple. You also had a couple of standalone stories, including a really creepy one with a doll. That, yeah, I was like, where is this going? But yeah, like I said, all in all, just a nice, well-rounded um, short story set. And like I said, I needed it for the challenge that I was working on, so that was great. And that was all of the books I read for this month. You can see I've already started filling out my July reads, but that's, like I said, because I'm filming this so late, there's no way I'd remember everything if I tried to do it all later. I'm still progressing in my challenges. Haven't finished any yet, and like I said, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle to finish them all. But I am moving right along with these as well. The one that I am doing well on is the Buzzword Challenge. I've gotten one every month, so that's really good. Oh, and I already did my one for July as well. And then the other one that I'm getting kind of close on too is my A to Z challenge. I only have 5 left for that. So, yeah, just slowly getting everything completed for my reading for this month, or for this year, I guess. And I'm already ahead of my reading goal, which is exciting. Um, I think I had said that I was going to read 75 books, and I think I'm at 60 so far for the year. Not in, or I mean, and that's including the ones that I've already read so far in July. So, yeah, definitely just chugging right along, but I still enjoy doing my reading journal, even though for the next couple of videos they might be a little bit off of, that first week of the month because life is getting so busy. But I do appreciate um, getting to do these, and I really enjoy sharing my thoughts. So, anyways, I hope that you enjoyed watching, and I will just talk to you later. Bye now.